of different opinions as far as this National Association of Realtors potential decision goes because it's not like official yet. And I made the comment that I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried for agents who know how to do their job well. I mean, I'm genuinely not. And that doesn't mean that I'm not worried for buyers and the potential downfall this could have for them. But again, an agent who is doing their job properly is starting this on the list side. So it will have the potential to really mess with buyers, but it doesn't have to if we're doing our job properly and if we are ensuring our client's best interest regardless of what side that you're on. It is not always up to the list side to make it right for the buyer as far as them being able to afford a buyer's agent and representation. However, they can negotiate that during their listing appointment, and if their client just absolutely isn't having it, that is okay. That is not a problem. As far as this lawsuit is concerned, that would be the new norm. But then from the buyer side, as an agent, aside from like VA, because they legally can't pay their agent and we're still waiting to hear what they're going to do with that, the buyer's agent should be able to have this conversation with their buyer, explain where they're at, talk to the lender, and if the buyer still sees that value and they're just not able to come to terms and make that work dollar amount wise, then unfortunately it does affect the buyer. But there's a lot of safeguards in place to kind of not even get us to that point if the majority of listing agents are able to help their client understand as the seller the benefit of utilizing this just as they got to utilize it. A really good example is my first home that we bought. We had no money, zero. We ended up with a USDA loan, which is zero down, which the parameters, you have to fit in a little box for that to work. We had $1,000 for earnest money, and fortunately we were going with new construction because it was a spec house, nothing fancy. So we ended up, and the sellers or the builder paid our closing costs. So we showed up to the closing table, no closing costs to be paid. We didn't have a down payment, and we got our $1,000 back. I think mine is like 10 cents. So we were able to go buy a refrigerator. Like, had no extra money. Now, we could afford the house. We could afford the utilities. However, all of that cash up front, we were struggling. We were newly married, had a brand new baby, had been renting, trying to save money, and in the midst had a baby. So that took up a lot of expenses. And we were still able to get into a home. That is what I fear, is that if we're not able to kind of continue that path, that it's really going to be hard for first-time home buyers or somebody trying to get back into the market if they've been out of it and been renting. Because like when we sold our house, we made enough money, and I know what you're thinking, oh my God, that's going to be so. Trust me, it wasn't like a whole bunch as to what our house was and what we paid off. But when we sold our house, we made enough in equity that we paid off our second home in Florida, which, full transparency, was a whole $75,000. Okay, like it wasn't some grand house. We paid off our house in Florida. We were able to pay off some debt that we had accrued that we wanted to pay off, and we did that like at the closing table. And we were able to put the down payment down, and all closing costs for our new house, which was only $20,000 more than what we sold our house for. So it wasn't like we had some huge upgrade. Like, we really and truly didn't do anything big, but because we had that opportunity to get into a home and build that equity, guess what? Our buyers for the house that we sold, they had representation who negotiated with me as my own listing or as my own agent to sell my house. They negotiated with me. They made sure repairs were done properly and in a timely fashion. And they had representation because we afforded them that. And I'm glad they did, because I wouldn't have wanted that buyer to come in there and feel screwed as I'm leaving the house and they're taking it on because they didn't know to do some of the things that their agent helped them do. So there's two sides to every coin, and I just think that as long as we are acting as we should, as realtors, actually giving value, being forthcoming with information, I don't think this is going to be so problematic as everybody is making it out to be. I think there are some answers that need to be had, surrounding a couple different instances, especially like VA buyers. But if those things get worked out, I have a feeling that other things are going to kind of come up with lending that are going to aid in this as well. So I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't stress, because if you're good at what you do, you believe in yourself and you know your worth and you can relay that to your clients, you shouldn't have any issues. It's called being ethical, it's called being responsible, and it's called being a business professional.